Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited, The Man Crisis. Learn why so many men are struggling to find their way in an increasingly gynocentric world in The Man Crisis. Get your copy of The Man Crisis in paperback and Kindle Unlimited today. I have a critical question to ask about Salvador Ramos, the mass shooter who murdered 19 children and 2 teachers, along with his grandmother, in Uvalde, Texas. Where is his father? Because when I look at his background, I don't hear anybody in the media talking about Salvador Ramos' father, and I believe Salvador Ramos' father not being in the picture is the reason why he's one of these beta males that fits the pattern and profile for beta males that I talk about in my book, The Man Crisis. Now, I remember YouTuber the late David Carroll talking about how many of these beta males become out of control as I was doing my research for The Man Crisis. And as I was watching his classic videos where he talked about how many of these single mothers cannot really handle these children when they get older, I looked back at David Carroll's videos and I saw how it fit right in line with what's going on with Salvador Ramos, the Uvalde mass shooter. Now, your Salvador Ramos comes from a single mother household, and it's clear to me that this single mother was not able to handle dealing with this boy as he got older. Now, the late David Carroll oftentimes talked about how many of these single mothers believe how they can raise a boy to become a man, and oftentimes they run into a lot of problems as this boy starts to get older. And I believe that's what happened here with your Salvador Ramos. What happened was the mother probably had no problems when the boy was very young, but as the boy started to grow into adolescence, that's when she started having some serious issues as related to dealing with this boy, because he was starting to participate in behaviors like most adolescents do, and then that is going out here and challenging the boundaries that she set for him, challenging her authority. And this is where she couldn't really handle things, and that's where she probably tried to bring in this 62-year-old boyfriend that she had, hoping that she could bring in a substitute man to start to assert male authority on her son and establish structure for her son as he is starting to get older. But what many single mothers don't understand is that at that point it becomes too late. Because if you don't establish male authority with the father and you don't establish order with the father early on, the boy will not learn how to respect any other male authority figures, because he grew up with female authority figures. And because he grew up with female authority figures, he does not see any other man as somebody he respects, because he believes that because he is the only male and he has been basically enabled and coddled by his mother, what happens is he doesn't see another man as somebody he needs to respect or an authority figure. He sees him as somebody on the same level as he is, so he does not respect that man. And that's what this woman tried to do. She probably tried to bring in a substitute man to try to deal with her son's out of control behavior. But what happened was she couldn't deal with that out of control behavior because she was dealing with a boy who was changing, and his voice was getting deeper, he was getting taller, and he was becoming more aggressive. And as he was becoming taller, his voice was getting deeper, and he was becoming more aggressive, and he was challenging her boundaries, he was challenging her authority. What happened was she wound up participating in the coping mechanisms that many single mothers participate in that I talk about in my book, The Man Crisis. And those 3 coping behaviors that women participate in when they get overwhelmed by an out-of-control teenage boy is, 1, they will just go out here and tune the boy out. So Anything the boy says will go in one ear and out the other, or they will go out here and they will shut down completely, and they will just not be able to cope with it. Now, from reports, it's looking like she participated in the third behavior I talked about in the man crisis that single mothers participate in, and that is deny the problems that are going on with their sons. And a lot of these single moms, when the boy gets out of control, they will go out here and deny the problems they're having with their son. And she says, "Oh, I didn't have any problems," and that's typical of your single mothers. Meanwhile, you had the grandparents and you had the boyfriend saying this boy was having problems, and they were having problems because he was on the internet and he was not following boundaries. And the grandmother said before she was murdered that the boy was running up the cell phone. So this woman was in denial about how deeply troubled this boy was, and because she could not handle this boy and his out of control behavior and was overwhelmed by his out of control behavior, she wound up going out here looking for others to try to help deal with him. And when this boy just became so out of control and the boyfriend couldn't deal with him and the mother couldn't deal with him, that's when they moved the boy out of her home and into the home of the grandparents. Unfortunately, at that point, it had become too late for your Salvador Ramos, because your Salvador Ramos at this point was one of these beta males at this point who did not understand how to function in the world, and he didn't know how to function in the world because he did not have any sort of structure as related to his life at an early age, because he did not have a father in his life. And without that father to set order, without that father to establish structure, and without that father to assert authority, this boy wound up becoming more and more out of control, because the mother just thinking, "Oh, I can just go out here and work and make money, and I'll be able to take care of this boy economically." But the problem was this boy never got any sort of structure or order, and because he got no structure or order, what happened was that he's on the internet listening to all sorts of craziness, and he's just got no boundaries, he's got no structure. Nobody is there to give him any sort of foundation. And when when beta males don't have any foundation in the real world, they go out here and participate in life in the secret world. And that's what happens with a lot of these beta males. They have these secret lives, and your Salvador Ramos had a secret life where he was really angry at a lot of people, and he was probably angry for a long time. And eventually, that anger and aggression, again, he started expressing it in the real world, because people were saying, "Oh, he was being bullied," but no, he was starting to being more aggressive with people, according to reports, and he was becoming the actual bully, looking to start being aggressive at the job he had at Wendy's, starting to look for fights in the street, starting to go out here and look to attack animals. This boy had serious problems, but all of those problems start inside of that single mother household where he was raised in a dysfunctional fashion. And the mainstream media doesn't want to talk about how this boy was raised in a dysfunctional fashion, because they don't want to go out here and hold women accountable for the dysfunctional way they have been raising boys here in America for the last 60 years. Because what is happening here with Salvador Ramos is something I have seen with a lot of guys in the black community. A lot of guys in the black community who are these thugs or these gang members, or even just regular, or just some of these guys out here, they grow up in the single mother household. They have no structure, they have no order, they don't understand boundaries, and their behavior becomes just as out of control as what we see with Salvador Ramos. They become just so out of control that the mother becomes overwhelmed, and the mother decides, oh, later on she wants to go out here and try to fix this boy by either going to find the father or find some other substitute to try to give this boy some male authority and some structure. But at that point, when this boy is a teenager, it's just too late at that point. And it's too late at that point because the boy has become set in his ways. He has already gotten used to getting away with all of his out of control behavior. And at this point, there's no way to correct this behavior, and there's no way to get this boy right. I mean, it goes back to this what is said in the Bible about train up a child in the way that it should go, and when they become older, they won't depart from it. And this is something that flies over the heads of many of these single mothers out here, or these beta males, fathers out here. You have to prepare a child for the world when they get older, and sadly, this boy was not prepared for the world as when he was younger, and when he became older, he wound up becoming extremely dysfunctional, and he wound up being simmering and boiling in anger because he was not really nurtured, he really was not really cared for, and like many mothers who grew up in feminist culture, his mom thought she could just go out here and buy things to take care of him, but there's more to taking care of a child than going out here and spending money. No, you have to actually spend time with your children. You have to care for their emotional needs. And what happens with many beta males is they don't get their emotional needs met. And because they don't get their emotional needs met, this makes them insecure. This makes them angry. This makes them simmer and boil in rage. And then what happens is they wind up exploding in rage at people like this Salvador Ramos did, where after he exploded in rage about the cell phone bill that his grandmother found, he then wound up looking to go out here and do harm to innocent children because he didn't know how to function as an adult. Now, again, there were people who said, oh, this boy was being bullied, but no, I don't believe he was being bullied. I don't even believe that he was poor, because if he was out here and he had money for a cell phone, if he had money to go out here and buy these weapons, he could go out here and try to work on himself and improving himself. But many beta males don't want to do that work because doing that work means they have to actually take responsibility for themselves. And that's one of the things many beta males don't learn, is how to take responsibility, because the single mom oftentimes enables his behavior until it becomes too out of control for her to deal with. Because this was a pattern I saw from reading an article talking about how he was just using the Wi-Fi too much and how he was using the cell phone. Clearly, the mom had enabled these behaviors in her son and let him get away with doing whatever he pleased. And now that when she wanted him to take some responsibility, that's when he became one of these, like most of these angry teenagers. He gets very angry and angry and aggressive. And again, this is what happens when you don't establish structure for your sons at an early age. When you don't establish structure for your sons at an early age with a man asserting authority, you wind up with a male who is completely out of control, and you wind up with a male you just can't deal with. And sadly, because his mother could not deal with him, he wound up becoming more and more out of control because the grandparents couldn't really deal with him, because at this point, again, he was not used to having any sort of authority as related to male authority. And it looked like the grandmother was the one trying to assert authority on him because he was used to female authority figures. But unfortunately, he got so angry and in his feelings that he wound up exploding in rage because he wanted to go out here and destroy the world around him, because he felt like his world was being destroyed. So he wanted to go out here and destroy the world around him because his family life was falling apart, his personal life was falling apart, and he wanted to go out here and just destroy the world around him. And that's what happens with a lot of these beta males. They go out here looking to destroy the world around them, and that's why they participate in this extreme as related to the spectrum of violent behaviors, which is the mass shooting. And that's why he participated in this mass murder of these innocent children, because he wanted to hurt people the same way he felt hurt. And that's what happens with many of these beta males, because they don't have a father in their lives. They don't have a man to establish order. They don't have a man to establish discipline. They don't have a man to establish structure. And whenever they get into a situation where they can't function, they wind up again destroying everything around them, because the minute you start to impose order, the minute you start to impose rules on a beta male who has been coddled by his mom, this is where he wants to lash out and push and destroy everything around him, because he's never had a man to go out here and assert hard authority on him, and a man to establish order with him. This is why fathers are important, because a father, when he sees a boy testing boundaries and pushing and asserting, trying to push back against authority, he lets him know where the line is. And when he lets him know where the line is, whether it be with a verbal command or with even physical pushback, this lets the boy know where the line is and where he can't cross it. It's like the late David Carroll would say, like, if you go in, if you're in my house, the whole thing about his father, he said that the father would tell him, if you want to do your own thing, you just go get your own place. And that's what fathers do. They let the boy know that this is the line, and if you don't like the way I'm doing things here, then you can go someplace else. And sadly, what happened here with this beta male is that he was enabled by people to the point where he got out of control, and then he went to his grandmother's house, again, somebody else's house, not his own, and he still continued to be out of control. And he was out of control because the mother taught him to be out of control. But nobody will talk about that part of anything, because it means, again, holding women accountable for the way they were raising boys, and pushing and saying that this whole narrative of feminist culture, which said we could raise boys to become men, just doesn't work. And many in the mainstream media don't want to talk about that aspect of us raising children dysfunctional due to the feminist ideals that we pushed back in the 60s. Now showing us that they don't work. They don't want to talk about how us talking about, oh, you can be the mother and the father, I can raise a boy to become a man, is not working, and how it's led to us having 2 to 3 generations of these beta males, basically 80 to 100 million of these beta males out here. They don't want to talk about that aspect of anything. No, what your politicians will do, and many of your pundits will do, is start talking about gun control. No, when you really start to look at this mass shooter, Salvador Ramos, you clearly see that this is not a gun issue. No, this is a family issue, and it points all the way back to the way we have been taught to raise children since the late 1960s, with the rise of the feminist movement, the rise of the welfare state, and the no-fault divorce that wound up breaking up families, and the socially engineering of the single mother household. All of these elements are the reason why we have these 80 to 100 million beta males, and why we are seeing this increase in all of this violence, ranging from just basically guys yelling and screaming all the way up to participating in extreme violence like mass shootings. The reason why we're seeing this is because of the way we have learned how to raise boys to become men, and instead of us raising healthy, functional men, we are raising a bunch of beta males, and these beta males, as they grow up into adulthood, are becoming men in crisis. And instead of them going out here and becoming functional individuals who contribute to society, many of these males are going out here and tearing down society, because they do not know how to function in it. And because they don't know how to function in it, they look to destroy the world around them. And that's what's happening here as related to this Salvador Ramos, who is a textbook beta male, like I talk about in my book, The Man Crisis, and his behaviors fit right in line with that pattern and profile that I talk about in The Man Crisis. And sadly, America doesn't want to deal again with the man crisis, because it means upending many decades of political policies that have now proven to become failures, such as, again, the rise of the single-parent household, the strong independent career woman, and it also means curtailing many of these work hours that people are participating in, where they're working 12 to 16-hour days. And it means what we're going to have to do is create some time so that men and women can be mothers and fathers and go out here and raise healthy children. This is something many people don't want to talk about because it means completely changing the way America has been living, and that means really upending many of the dysfunctional approaches and processes we have been conditioned to become accustomed to over the last 60 years. Because over the last 60 years, we have seen all of the rise of these beta males, and we have seen that instead of them being the kinder, gentler, softer male that we expected them to be, they are becoming more and more frustrated, more and more out of control, more and more violent, and instead of looking to build society further up, they are tearing society down, and they are becoming more and more violent, and their violence is increasing in frequency because as these males try to function in a world where mostly females have power and authority, they don't see a place or a purpose for themselves, and this is why they're out here participating in these violent behaviors and participating in all sorts of debauchery and depravity. Many people really don't want to talk about this because this is where the real issue is. It is not about guns like many politicians want you to believe. It is about the family, and it is about the deterioration of the family, because America wanted to go in a new age direction in the 60s, and now we're paying for that new age direction with a whole lot of chaos in the 21st century. So this is what people wanted. They want to talk about gun control to deflect from dealing with the decline of the American family, because in every other part of the world, they have time for families, they have time for children to be children, and they have a family unit and a family structure in place where the children can go out here and learn the model for families. But in America, we threw away our model for families in order to please a small group of feminists, and as a result, because of them telling us we did not need a father in the home, this is why we've got all of these mass shooters and all of these other violent individuals, because without the father in the home to establish leadership, without the father in the home to establish order, without the father in the home to establish structure, you don't get boys who grow up to become men. You get boys who grow up to become men in crisis, and these men in crisis go out here and they look to destroy the world around them. Now, if you want to learn more about how these beta males are extremely dysfunctional and what makes them dysfunctional and what makes them violent, you can pick up my book, The Man Crisis, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find The Man Crisis on Smashwords, the iBook store, and Google Play. And if you want to see me do more men's issues videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, or my Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and Kindle, Stop Simping in Cyberspace. Learn how to avoid predatory females like Instagram models and e-girls in their virtual con games with Stop Simping in Cyberspace. Get your copy of Stop Simping in Cyberspace in paperback and Kindle today.